Today we are talking about striking a balance, mental health, emotional well-being and self-care and caregiving. And so today really wanting to discuss various avenues regarding your emotional well-being. This obviously includes self-awareness, as well as mental health and symptoms, what we need to be mindful of, and also how we're able to improve that. And so here are the objectives, some things that we will be discussing. Again, we will be defining emotional well-being, mental health, mental illness, self-care, indicators or symptoms of imbalance, as well as identifying tools to create and maintain emotional well-being. Okay, and a few resources at the end. And again, Linda, feel free to jump in, ask questions. Feel free to share any comments, any feedback during the presentation. So I
Thank
welcome
you.
You're welcome. I welcome a very interactive approach here. So a little bit about myself, as Dr. Aderonke has shared, and so more on my professional expertise. So I have been in the helping profession or social services now for 26 years, and with 20 of those years working primarily with individuals with disabilities and their caregivers. I really started in this profession as it was years ago. I was about 17, 18. And so it started off with me being a socialization coach for a program or an organization called Easter Seals. And I was working with an individual, actually two, a teenager with autism and a 21-year-old as well with autism. And so that really allowed me to step into this line of work and absolutely loved it. But one thing that I remembered was for the 13-year-old, very interactive, I absolutely loved working with him. He was nonverbal, and he lived with his parents and his sister, his younger sister. And I remember the first time I met him, and I went and picked him up, getting off the bus. And so we were at the local YMCA. And I remember my supervisor had said, everyone who works with him, they don't last. They only work for maybe a week, 2 weeks at most. And so just prepare yourself. He's very active, but again, no one really works with him for long term. And so I remember walking into this situation. And so he was walking with me, and all the kids had gone in, and he loved to play. And so we were outside. And I remember he was very active. He was running and playing on all the various playground activities. And I had reached a point where I was exhausted. We did this for about maybe 3 hours straight. And I was very young. And so I remember sitting on this big rock, and he walks up to me and he tilts his head over and he places his face right here next to me, and he started to laugh. And I remember looking at him, and I said, I must look really crazy to you right now. And he just kept laughing. And again, nonverbal, but we were able to connect in that moment. And so I went on to work with him for a couple years and absolutely enjoyed it. And that really was the door into the helping profession. I had developed a relationship with his parents, and even after transitioning into other jobs or other positions, I continued to have that relationship with the family. But I remember with the mother being the primary caregiver and the level of stress, and she would share with me the struggles of caregiving and her ability to provide care for her daughter, her younger daughter, and being there for her while also being married and tending to the needs of the home, as well as tending to and being involved within her marriage, and while also holding a job outside of work. And so that stuck with me. And the level of, or her ability to do her best to create balance. And so that oftentimes is where I would come in to provide that respite, if you will, so that she can have a break to either tend to herself, self-care, and or have a date night with her husband, or even spend time with her daughter. And so again, that really opened the door and allowed me to see from a different perspective on what the caregiving experience truly is. And so again, I've been in the field for 26 years. My current position is a leader for a local governmental agency. And so I work as a district manager, and I equip the next generation of leaders as they develop in their leadership as well. And so I continue to work with individuals and their caregivers as well. And so very fulfilling profession. Okay, so I wanted to start off with a couple of caregiving facts. Let me move this here. Okay, and so generally speaking, 1/3 of the adult population, and again, this is in the United States, is a caregiver to a family member with either an illness or a disability. This may not be surprising, may or may not be surprising. The majority of caregivers are women, reported as women. And oftentimes, as we may know, and again, Linda, as you may or may not have experienced, but oftentimes may face some stress or stressful situations, or poor well-being or poor social connections because of the time that goes into caregiving, and or is there someone else who's able to step in and assist while you're able to have some time to yourself as well. Caregivers experience financial hardships, oftentimes at a higher rate or higher level than those who are not caregivers. And this is due to medical costs, lower income, limits for insurance, and as well as if they were or if they are caring for a spouse, where the spouse may have left the workforce due to disability, that also impacts their financial well-being. And in situations where caregivers have poor effective coping styles, which is what we'll get into, recipients are at a higher risk for falling, experiencing decline in functional abilities, and having secondary complications such as pressure sores and others. Okay. So now let's get into definitions here. Because obviously before we can get into the symptoms and what we can do to improve our emotional well-being and mental health, let's discuss what that looks like. Okay. So emotional well-being, and I have a couple of different definitions, if you will. And so overall, the emotional well-being is really gauging your emotional quality, the quality of your everyday experience, one's ability to manage their emotions, one's ability to cope with life stressors. And so we really look at, when we're talking about emotional well-being, we are looking at two types of coping strategies primarily: the problem-focused style and the emotion-focused coping style. So problem-focused is actually the more healthier of the two. Why? Because you are focusing on the problem, on the issue. And so all of your attention, all of your decision making is being focused on, how do I resolve this issue? It's more solution focused, more solution based. And so we're coming at it from a positive perspective, as opposed to emotional focused coping. That is where we are focused primarily with the emotions, where we're not looking at the behavior, we're not looking at the problem itself and how we can solve the issue, but primarily not being in control of our emotions, not being able to manage those emotions. And so it takes away from the issue or from the situation that needs to be resolved, or the decision that's needing to be made. Okay. So again, emotional well-being, I want to really hone in on that. It is the emotional quality. And so really, as we're talking about this today, really evaluate where you are in your life currently and your emotional state on a regular day-to-day basis. And again, things happen, situations occur. And so there are times, understandably, where your emotion may be sad in one moment, depending on the situation, may be very happy overjoyous in another situation. So emotions can be situational, but the important thing is not to remain in a low emotional state, and especially for longer periods of time. Because if we, let's say, have depressed mood, and that can move into a state of depression. And especially after several weeks, several months, now we're looking at possible mental illness and how do we need to address that, as well as opening the door for treatment. Okay, and so we'll talk about that a little bit later, but really gauging where are your emotions on a regular basis. Okay, mental health. Let me move this over. Mental health is a state of mind. It is characterized by, again, emotional well-being. So there is a relationship here. It is characterized by emotional well-being, healthy coping skills, and good behavioral adjustment, meaning that your behavior or how you respond to a situation is appropriate for the situation. Your healthy coping skills, again, going back to problem-focused as opposed to emotional-focused coping. Mental health also includes emotional, psychological, social well-being, and your ability to cope with stress. So really, mental health is exploring the relationship among how we think, how we feel, and how we behave, or what we produce, the decisions that we make. And so ensuring that that relationship is healthy. Now, when it becomes unhealthy, that's when we enter into a different realm on the spectrum, mental illness. And so when there is a change, a negative change in how we think and how we feel and how we behave, then we start to delve into a different side, because now there is an imbalance where it could possibly be, again, depressed mood. It can be anxiety. And so it can go into various different things, as well as addictions or addictive behaviors and your attempt to cope. But what ends up happening is, while trying to cope, we end up getting into these type of addictions or addictive behaviors that are not healthy for our mind, our body, our spirit. So again, I encourage people to always be in a state of self-reflection. Always check in with yourself on a daily basis and throughout the day, especially as caregivers, as we are caregiving. Check yourself on where you are emotionally. If a situation happens and you're very riled up, do you need to take a step back? Do you need to have a break? Have you been providing caregiving for several days, maybe several weeks, without a day off or without some time to yourself? That is going to eventually have an impact. And so again, it is very important to ensure that you are okay, because before we can help someone else and caregive for someone else, we first have to be whole and healthy within ourselves. Okay. Any questions so far?
There's a question on the chat. How can caregivers recognize signs of burnout and address them effectively?
Perfect question.
I know
and
you
I'm happy. I'm sorry?
I know you mentioned depression as an example, but how can caregivers recognize those signs of burnout and address them effectively?
So perfect question. So especially when it comes to depression, there are several things. And there's a slide where I'll get into it more in detail. But primarily, you're looking at changes in your sleep patterns. Are you sleeping more? Are you sleeping less? Are there concerns with insomnia, where you're having a difficult time falling asleep or staying asleep? Are you having moments of your normal having the blues, if you will, your normal sad periods, again, that are situational, where someone may have unfortunately passed? It is understandable for that particular situation to grieve and to have sadness. However, as it prolongs, that is where we start to get into, okay, now we're looking at possible depression. Again, longer periods of sadness, changes in your sleeping patterns, changes in your eating patterns, where you're either eating or overeating, or eating more than what you typically would, or eating less. Withdrawal, where you are now withdrawing from other individuals. Maybe you're typically a very active individual, and you like to engage, have social connections, go out when you can. And now you no longer have the motivation to do so. Now it's more so isolation. Another factor when it comes to depression is your ADLs, your activities of daily living, where that begins to suffer, if you will, where normally you would typically engage and make sure that you tend to your self-care, your personal hygiene. However, now we're starting to see changes where, okay, you're not wanting to bathe as often as you did. Maybe now you're wanting to stay in the bed more often, and sleep for longer periods of time. Maybe you possibly work outside of the home as well, and now you no longer have the strength, the ability, the energy, the motivation to do the things that you were doing previously. And so those are some areas where you can see where depression now may start to set in. And so during those times, I definitely encourage, again, we'll discuss a little bit later, but definitely self-awareness, because you are the expert of yourself. And then also too, individuals who are close to you can observe and start to see, hey, I'm noticing a change in your behavior. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but I just wanted to let you know, maybe go get that checked out. Maybe go make an appointment with the doctor. Okay, so it starts with that self-awareness. And then from there, seeking treatment. I would definitely speak with your primary physician, your primary care physician or PCP, as well, possibly treatment, possibly therapy. I am a strong proponent to clinical therapy. If you are identified as a faith-based individual, there's also spiritual counseling as well, as an option too. And so for more severe cases, the doctor may prescribe medication, along with psychotherapy or clinical therapy to assist, especially if there's a diagnosis of depression and or anxiety, and or types of mental illness or mental or areas where you're requiring more balance in your life. Okay, and then there's other practical things you can do as well, such as
Thank you.
journaling and exercising. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And so here, self-care. Again, self-explanatory, but want to make sure that it's understood. Self-care is to take time to do things that help you live well. Do things that help to bring balance. I always like to say harmony, right? To bring harmony to you. And so that means tending to not only physical, because I think oftentimes we believe that self-care is tending to physical only, but it is tending to all facets of you. That includes your spiritual self-care. That includes your emotional, psychological self-care. And so really knowing what you enjoy to do. I know for some individuals that may include traveling, etc., or going out if and when they're able to. But primarily, as a caregiver, it is vital to make time to engage in self-care, even if it is a candlelit bath and just having that time to reconnect. Okay. And I know for some individuals, yoga, meditation, and prayer as well. So symptoms of imbalance, changes in eating and sleeping patterns as we have discussed, low to no energy or no motivation, okay? Unexplained aches and body pains, poor coping skills, addictions and or addictive behaviors, okay? Alcohol and or substance abuse, or poor interpersonal relationships. Okay. And so those relationships, again, really being in tune with yourself and noticing changes. Now, normal changes as we get older, as we transition into various seasons of our lives, that is normal. Okay. That is a part of the life process, right? But when we're noticing drastic symptoms, drastic changes that are creating imbalance, that are further creating stress on us and on the body, that is where we need to take a step back And so there is a video I'd like to play, and I'm hoping that I will be able to play it. And in 1 second here, and hopefully I can share it for you. Okay. And please let me know if you're unable to hear it. I hope you can.
Have you started it? Okay, it's starting.
You are a caregiver and you're experiencing
Yes.
burnout
Are you
and
able
you
to hear
don't
it?
address it, it can be detrimental to the care of your loved one and of yourself. It's similar to
Yes. Okay, you're able to hear it? Perfect.
Yes.
being on an airplane and
Yes.
putting on your own oxygen mask first. You can't help somebody else until you help yourself. Caregiver burnout really is individual to each person, but there are some common early warning signs that as a caregiver you may experience. You may develop depressive symptoms. You may become easily frustrated or short-tempered. You may have a lack of quality sleep or a good sleep routine. You may find yourself becoming socially withdrawn, and you may experience more illness due to lack of self-care. One really good option if you are a caregiver and you feel like you've exhausted all of your different options and you're experiencing burnout, Elder One is a PACE program, a program for the all-inclusive care of the elderly through Rochester Regional Health that allows additional care of your loved one. It doesn't take away anything that you're doing. It also enhances your relationship with your loved one. You're allowed to have that relationship as well as still provide care, but Elder One eases that burnout by providing the respite and the services that we have available. It could decrease your ability to have a good functional relationship with the person that you're caring for, and it can also come out in other aspects of your life because oftentimes as a caregiver, you're not just taking care of your loved one, but you have responsibility to your own job, your spouse or your partner, or your children. So your inability to stretch yourself that thin without recognizing those signs of caregiver burnout can negatively impact you and the care of your loved one. I feel like as caregivers, we take a lot on ourselves, and when we ask for help or we seek help, we feel like that's a failure. But with my experience of taking care of my mom, seeking community supports with a care team has enhanced my relationship to be able to be her daughter while also making sure that she is provided with safe, quality care.
Okay. I will stop.
And
Pardon?
I said that's great reminders right there. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome. No, absolutely. And so I wanted to let me share any questions so far as I get back to the PowerPoint.
No, none at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay. And you're able to see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And there we go. Okay, so what can we do? And so there are various things that we can do, but these are just a couple of things. And so, as I mentioned earlier, self-awareness is key. As just being an expert of yourself, being mindful of any changes in your behavior, any changes in your thought process, and how you make decisions, any changes in your emotions, your emotional well-being, being mindful of that. And so again, self-awareness is key. And for those who may journal, I'm a big proponent for journaling as well. And so that is part of that self-awareness too, to really being able to self-reflect and being mindful of, again, your emotions, your thought process, and your behavior, because there's a relationship among the three of those. And usually when there is imbalance, you're going to see an impact in one of those three areas, if not two, or if not all three. Your network of support. This is vital for individuals who are caregivers. It is vital to create a network of support. your support system. And so may it be a spouse, may it be adult children, may it be friends, family, even someone who is not related to you by blood, right? It can be, again, friends, coworkers, creating that network of support where they can be available if you need to speak with someone, where you need to, hey, you know, I just need a moment to just to vent or just to be able to share what's going on, or even able to process a situation came about, or maybe I took my loved one to the doctor and maybe they did not get the best news. And while there may be pressure to feel as though I need to show up strong for my loved one, deep down, you're not addressing or not tending to your own self-care and your own needs and your own thoughts as you're moving through this process. So even having someone where you can share those experiences with to help you process anything that may be happening. Okay. As well as, again, respite, getting to know, and I have some resources here, but getting to know the resources around you. Your local governmental agencies are definitely, especially for Riverside Office on Aging and Riverside County. And so through their in-home supportive services program, especially, and their family caregiver program as well. Being mindful and tapping into the various resources, if you haven't already, will be a great support as well. This support group is crucial. And so again, making those connections, creating that network of support, and also within that, not being afraid to ask for help. And so in the video that we just saw, it is important to be able to ask for help. And whether that is a loved one who is able to help, or if that is someone, a paid service who is able to help, again, you know, depending on your situation, your comfort level, but making sure that you're reaching out for help if and when you need it. Because in this line of work, and definitely we have not been created to do life alone. So with this line of work, it is important to have those to come alongside you, okay? Engage in your own healing journey, including grief process if needed. And so especially if we are, if there is someone who, I'll give you an example where someone was providing caregiving services to it was a husband and wife, and one of them had passed away. And so while the caregiver wanted to be there and was showing up physically and emotionally there for the surviving individual, they were not tending to their own, as a caregiver, they were not tending to their own grieving process. And instead, they were pushing down all of the emotions. And so I'm showing up here as a caregiver for this individual, but I'm not tending to my own needs. And so again, if we're not emotionally balanced, if there's no stability there, how are we able to assist someone? And so that again opens the door for burnout. So again, being mindful of engaging in your own healing journey and processing any emotions that need to be addressed. As I mentioned earlier, clinical therapy and spiritual counseling. Again, I'm a strong proponent to both. And so I encourage, especially if you are the individual where talking is very helpful. Some individuals, they prefer to process more to themselves, maybe through journaling, maybe through prayer, maybe through meditation, maybe through exercise. And for others, they may be open to clinical therapy to maybe address some more deep-seated issues or deep-rooted issues, okay? Evaluate your own relationships. Oh, yes, Dr. Aderonke.
Okay, so, you know, we do have in our family caregiver support group, we have a group who resides in rural communities, and most likely, you know, they're probably not going to be able to afford therapies or any other type of support that some people will be able to have access to in cities or towns, small towns, but we do have some of our community members that they reside in very rural areas. So what type of circle of support would you recommend for those who are not able to have access to some of those great resources that you have shared with us so far?
Good question. Thank you. One thing that especially being a helping profession, we work a lot with community-based organizations. And so whether it is a large area or a rural area, being in touch with those community-based organizations, that can also include nonprofits, that can include your church if you are involved in your church, as well as different groups and different organizations that are within your church. In addition to the clinical therapy, spiritual counseling, especially one thing that we have definitely learned as we were moving through COVID, the COVID experience, the ability to do telecounseling and telehealth. And so if that is an option, and having that discussion with the doctor to see, again, if that is an option and for a referral. And even though being in a rural area, you're able to access through telehealth, telecounseling, where the counselor may be in another state or maybe a few hours away within the same state, but you're able to connect with that individual either via internet or by telephone. But again, if that is not an option, I definitely encourage individuals to get involved in community-based organizations within your area, and that includes the nonprofits and the churches, okay? And
Thank
any
you.
governmental agencies. You're welcome. Okay, other things that you can do. Identify for stressors, right? So identify any stressors or stressful situations in your life, and how do you cope with that? Okay, exercise, and these are your general practical ways to engage in emotional well-being. Exercise, sleep regimen, developing a sleep regimen if you can, going to sleep at a certain time. So very basic things, but oftentimes these very basic things will change your life for the better. Attend your medical appointments. And I know it can be challenging at times with caregiving responsibilities to see if someone is able to assist and step in and help to provide caregiving for your loved ones while you tend to your medical, to your health appointments, etc. But if and when you're able to, it's definitely encouraged, because you want to make sure that you're still in a healthy space as well. Develop healthy outlets. Again, connecting, social connections, especially if that is something that you enjoy doing, making sure that you have time to do that, and also looking into respite opportunities. And that may again be paid or informal, where someone can come into the home, a loved one, or a paid service where either you or through your insurance can pay for someone to come into the home, maybe a couple hours a week, so that you're able to go out and either tend to your own personal self-care needs, etc. Okay. And healthy coping skills, which we discussed earlier. Okay. And so I wanted to create an exercise for you. And so this is really looking at exploring your current habits and any areas where you see where there is some imbalance, and how can we improve on that? Okay, especially I'm not big for, New Year's resolutions, and I know that the year is slowly coming to an end, but really about making lifestyle changes that can start today, realistic lifestyle changes. So if you have a piece of paper or something to write with, or your phone, definitely take out and a piece of paper, draw several vertical lines, and I will show you an example in the next slide. And in each column, select one new habit or skill you'd like to improve on. Okay. Create a goal, then create action steps to reach the goal, and select indicators for when the goal has been reached. And so I'm going to show you what this looks like. So let me stop share. And let's see. Okay, give me 1 second so I can pull this up for you. And this should be it. Yes. Okay. Okay, so this is what the exercise looks like here. Okay, so you are, again, and if you're unable to do it today, I would love for you to, but if you're unable to, that is okay, but definitely take a snapshot of this right here. So this is helping you to develop a wellness plan, okay? And again, being mindful of what areas is there imbalance? And you can break this down into different areas in your life. So physically, what is my wellness plan physically? Am I sleeping well? Am I eating well? Am I exercising? If there's any discrepancy there, then develop a wellness plan on, okay, this is the area where I see a discrepancy or an imbalance. This is the goal, and your goal needs to be a SMART goal. So make sure that your goal is specific, make sure that it is measurable, make sure that it is attainable or achievable, make sure that it's realistic, and make sure that it is time bound. So the goal that you're looking at is put a number to it and put a time frame so that it is achievable for you. Okay. So again, this can be physical as well as your wellness can also include your spiritual well-being as well. Is there any discrepancy or imbalance there that you feel would help you to become an even better caregiver? So then you would create a goal and then your action steps. What steps am I putting in place? Realistic steps am I putting in place to achieve that goal by this particular time frame? And how will I know that I reached my goal? Okay. This can also be emotional or psychological. So really looking at your entire life. And again, this could be over time because it can be a lot depending on the situation. But I really encourage you to look at your life in its entirety and see what areas is there an imbalance and where I can improve on. Okay. And then develop a wellness plan and also have an accountability partner, okay? Possibly another caregiver as well. And you both have or both develop a wellness plan and hold each other accountable, touch base once a week. How are you doing on your wellness plan? Okay. Any questions so far?
No, great. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay. And we'll share here. Okay. Okay. And then these are some resources. So again, life is not meant to be done alone. And so one of the most important things that can happen as a caregiver, or that can be in your arsenal, if you will, is to have that support system, whatever that looks like to you, and to develop healthy coping skills. Okay. And here I have some resources. And some of them are pertaining to the states. And this last one here is International Alliance Carrier Organizations. And it's up to you, Dr. Aderonke, if you would like for me to click on each to browse, or if you would like for me to leave it on the screen.
We can leave it on the screen. I do have a question, another question. The question is regarding, encouraging open communication, because that is very important too. Because in the caregiving journey, because most people who have been doing this for many years, it becomes like a routine for them.
Yeah.
And you identified a lot of helpful tips for them to share what they're going through with others. And so my question is, how can caregivers initiate conversations about their needs and limitations with family members, friends, and employers? And because it's very important.
Absolutely. No, thank you for asking that question. And so as simplistic as it sounds, it starts here. It starts with number one, knowing what your needs are, because that is going to direct the conversation. So one, knowing, okay, what are my needs? Are my needs that I need to have Monday from 10 to 2 off so that I can go assist or I can provide caregiving services. So really sitting down, that's the very first thing, is knowing what are your specific needs. 2, having that conversation can include, especially if it's involving family. For instance, if you have siblings and maybe all the caregiving responsibilities are on you. If you can, or if you're able to have a family meeting or connect, and I know it's not always easy, and not all the time is the outcome successful, but making sure that you are expressing your needs with your family and what is needed for in order for you to be successful in your role as a caregiver. And then when it comes to, let's say if you work outside of the home and you need flexible hours, definitely having that conversation would include a schedule. And again, it depends on what type of work that you're doing, but sitting down, scheduling a meeting with your supervisor, and it may be others as well, but starting off with the supervisor and explaining, this is a situation. You don't have to get very personal if you don't like to, especially depending on that relationship that you have with your supervisor, but having that discussion with them and stating, I want to continue to work here. I enjoy my position here. I've brought a lot to the table. However, circumstances have changed in my life. And so I am requesting these particular hours or whatever those particular needs are. And also, prior to that, having a conversation with human resources to see what your options are. Where I've seen various situations where people are able to go out on FMLA, family medical leave, or even intermittent. And so where they're able to take time out whenever they need to go for medical appointments or to tend to caregiving services. And so starting off prior to meeting with your supervisor is having a meeting with human resources to see what your options are. That is, again, if you're working outside of the home and you're needing to request flexible hours or additional accommodations. Again, with your family, with your friends, and creating that network, knowing what your needs are, and having a conversation with them. Again, it realistically, it may not always be a successful outcome, but it is important to be able to let your needs be known and to ask for help.